Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends once again to the trade module, which is quite interesting to note because of its demand in the present days of trade, where the number of items being exported and imported are very difficult to know, only because there are large number of strategies developed by participating countries for trade. And in that context, since the world has already been opened off, especially after globalization, especially after India's contest after 1990. So, we are open to many risks because of the fact that our products are very differentiated, and products are very differentiated by quality marginally or relatively. So, therefore, to differentiate product and the nature of demand across the board is very difficult to define. In this backdrop, this particular lecture is meant for, and we are defining a clear cut identification of intra-industry trade and inter-industry trade. Though we have already defined the differences by theory, now we will be approaching towards India's need and strategies developed for various products and the nitty-gritties within it. So, this is lecture number 18, week number 4, myself Dr. Pratap Mohanty, faculty member in IIT Roorkee. Now, once again revisiting the structure of our module of this week, where we are sticking once again to the new trace theory. This is new, once again I am saying, because we are attaching the production function to be very realistic and which is based on economy of scale of production or increasing returns to scale, which is explained here. And the result of this is imperfectly competitive market, and which results in differentiated products. And due to differentiation in the product, intra-industry trade is the outcome, and there are other possibilities as well through trade called outsourcing and offshoring. We will also take it off in our due course of lectures, because of which the basis of trade is our specialization due to increasing returns to scale that lead to gains from trade. We have already noted in the last lecture on what kind of gains are expected for the consumers, for the producers, for exchange, for specialization, for price minimization. There are various possibilities. So, let us tune into the core aspects of intra-industry trade, and on the way we will also differentiate to inter-industry trade. So, to start with the difference, we have already said one is based on internal economies, another is based on external economies, but both are actually important for trade. But present days discussions are largely dependent on internal economy of scale, and the Krugman's theory is actually based on this internal economy of scale. Now, in order to refer this particular lecture and its content, you may follow EPW latest article published just recently last month 2019 June 22nd. So, Economic and Political Journal has come up with one special article. Now, why it is important? In the prologue and in our next slide is on justification of intra-industry trade. why recent evidences basically in the present days in the world economy, which suggests that the primary regions of economic growth are, or the determinants of economic growth are diversification and the composition in the export basket in the globe. So, diversification is one of the most important outcome. Now, second one again very empirically derived, and those are the evidences in the 1970s, which says that the large part of our world trade actually takes place between similar countries and also similar products, and initially identified by Global and Lloyd. Therefore, our index which we are going to go talk about in the next class, measuring intra-industry trade by GL index, Global and Lloyd index. Again there are differentiation and by different expert will take it forward accordingly. So, which actually cannot be explained by the similar products and the similar countries, why they are trading each other, these are actually not discussed in the intra-industry theories. Now, the intra-industry trade in a horizontally differentiated products, basically products which are just differentiated because of the variety and those are not by quality, but by just substitutability is there, which largely due to the increase in the consumer's utility, and as identified by Krugman's piece of literature published in 1979, which resulted him for receiving Nobel Prize. The consumer's utility increases result in higher horizontal differentiated products. So, they love for variety approach, especially the Krugman's talks about variety approach. When the consumers view goods as bundle of characteristics, as the approach mentioned in the Helpman's article published in 1981. So, after Krugman's identification, Helpman's also talked about consumers attach bundle of goods which are having with higher characteristics or different characteristics. So, these are the two economists who are actually recognized for this initial phase of research. Similarly, so far as the quality variation among the exported goods are concerned, there have been substantive improvement in terms of product features and characteristics, and those are called vertically differentiated products. So, we will hands on emphasizing on horizontal differentiated products and vertically differentiated products. So, we have different indexes accordingly. Now, higher end processor, as an example to start with, higher end processors enabled personal computer may be an example of such variation in quality, just personal computer and higher end variety of personal computer. So, these two are referred in the context of vertically differentiated products and are responsible for intra-industry trade. What are the further justification for intra-industry trade? Now, one of the most important justification for intra-industry trade is income disparities across nations. As we all know that per capita income of the developed country is much higher than that of the developing and underdeveloped countries. Now, India's case is quite different than that of many developed countries. They are also differ by technological differences due to endowment in terms of skilled labor. Also, especially for developing and India's context, human capital is very different than other countries. So, these are responsible for differentiating products due to better incorporation of innovation in their trade module. So, quality differences as we already said, but in some of the piece of literature like Flap and Helpman in 1987. After 1981, Helpman talked about consumer looks for different characterization of goods or different characteristics of goods. Flap is also attached with identifying north versus south trade, which is largely due to technological differences. North usually refers for the developed countries and south usually refers for the developing or underdeveloped countries. So, quality differences actually arises or attaches differences attached with the trade between two sets of economy like north and south. It is generally believed that the developing countries are attached with 4 quality products, and they largely export the poor variety of products identified in one of the paper by Acharya from Indian economists, also Marjit and the Raychaudhuri in their 1997 paper. They said that largely we have Indian products or even developing countries products are poor in quality, and those are exported are poor in quality. In this context, many other theories are also developed. So, again the conventional belief and in different works of experts, which says that IIT intra-industry trade occurs mainly among the developed countries with similar varieties of resources, similar country features. So, therefore, IIT is actually usually evidence in developed countries, but over the time this is not the fact. Like Reinert 2003 points out that the phenomenon is actually emerging among the South Asian developing economies. So, not necessarily in the developed countries, it is now very much in the phenomenon for the developing countries like India. So, there are other justifications to talk about like the scarcity of physical and human capital and the backward technology, low rate of innovation. There are many informations are asymmetric in nature, moral hazard. Asymmetric means the buyers and sellers are not properly connected. The buyers in one country is differing with the buyers in another country due to information lacking. Similarly, moral hazard, this is one of the also strategy. The moral of the party, one party is actually hazardous, and which has resulted in differing the quality for the others or the access for the others. So, when one knows that the quality is not good, but those are being sold in another market, especially the second hand market. In the present context, if you count down OLX type of platform, OLX and Quicker type of platform, where even if we know that products are not good, but we expect that another to suffer and we can sell it differently by developing different strategy. So, similarly, adverse selections are made due to those factors and which resulted in low quality of products among the developing countries, and these are the very much trivial factors in developing countries for which has been responsible for low quality exported products. Since another important connection of intra-industry trade for strategies, since products are different by quality vertically as well as horizontally. Now, it has been also observed that various forms of restrictions and regulations are developed by participating countries. Those are largely called non-tariff barriers. In the present day, they are called non-tariff barriers in the form of quality regulations, environmental standards. I think I have already emphasized from the beginning, but I will have separate dedicated sessions for it, called sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and technical barriers to trade, where some technicalities are attached. TBTs and SPS are very important regulatory framework developed by the participating countries to restrict the product, especially imports from developing countries. So, this is the recent phenomena, and the countries are actually suffering, and this is one of the problem where intra-industry trade must have been discussed in detail. Otherwise, the participating countries might be resulting various forms of other threats. So, hypothesis in one of the works by Hausman in 2007, which says that countries become what they produce. So, countries become what they produce, as emphasized by Hausman. So, if the country produce better variety, better end products will actually attach good good return because of their participation in trade, and if these countries are actually are participating their products with low end varieties, the end result will be also bad for them. So, usually it has been observed that the developing countries practice this, and they are poor because their activities are poor and their productions are poor. It has also been talked about in one of the important model by Professor Jagdish Bhagwati in 1958 called immersed rising growth rate, which is a theoretical situation initially as proposed by him. It says that our productions are self paradoxical. So, especially for India and developing countries context, which explain to the fact that many products are actually very low quality in nature, and countries do not attach better terms of trade, and our terms of trade in the globe is very low. So, TOT terms of trade is very low in the international context. Diversification of exports in high value added products is required to achieve more sustained growth. Effects of growth effects of openness is also pointed by Aditya and Acharya in their latest article published in 2013. So, therefore, they suggest that diversification of exports, especially high value added products, is very essential so far as growth and its impact on export is concerned or trade openness is concerned. So, these are the cases we try to link with China and India, because China and India's products are largely low quality in nature, and they attach very low terms of trade in the international prices. So, suggestions are accordingly made. Even the immersed rising growth rate is connected to these two countries largely. Even in the works of Hausman 2007 also referring to the context of India and China. Similarly, these two countries are under threat, often the case, especially India's case, in the context of non-tariff barriers. So, non-tariff barriers are actually are huge form of restrictions to these countries. So, we must take it forward as detailed as possible to understand the intra-industry trade and its connection to trade. So, what are the different types of economy of scale which has connection with intra-industry trade should be discussed in detail. We have already discussed last to last lecture where internal and external economy of scale. In external we mean size of the industry when whole Q as a whole increases, the result in average cost of the particular firm to fall, and similarly when only the firm Q1 increases, so that also result in average cost of the firm first firm or the firm concerned decreases. So, this is very important because we need to explore which has resulted in, is it the agglomeration effect or the industry as a whole growing, therefore, the particular firm is growing, or their domestic or their internal adjustment or the efficient allocation of resources which has caused the particular firm to actually reduce their average cost. Now, what is more important, when many small firms that are competitive may comprise a large industry and benefit from the services equipment or equipment efficiently provided to the large group of firms. So, these are basically the external economies, and internal economies of scale result when large firms have a cost advantage over small firms, which leads to an imperfect competitive market. We are actually referring to the context of imperfectly competitive market, and imperfectly competitive market which actually measures the efficiency of this particular firm. and its economies of scale. So, in the previous class we have already explained this diagram. So, in a nutshell let me mention it is only unidirectional. So, direction is more important, so there is no question of overlap, whereas in case of intra-industry trade, so we emphasize the matter for their economy of scale, or in increasing returns to scale of production, where there are both the direction of the trade, some of the component are with both the direction. So, this segment is called intra-industry trade, where other segment is called inter-industry trade. We have already discussed this. So, to differentiate further for intra-industry and inter-industry trade, let me again recapitulate with some theories, because it is very important to imbibe for better understanding. So, the basis for trade, since I have already discussed in the last class, I am only touching upon the conclusion part of those theories. So, the basis for trade in earlier theories, especially in comparative advantage, it is due to the comparative cost differences. HO theory, it is factor endowment differences, where in Krugman we have been emphasizing the internal economies, especially internal economies, not the external economies, and the differences in terms of trade. Now, how India stands is very important. As a case, now onwards our classes must be oriented towards more on cases, more on evidences, articles written by the experts in different journals. So, this is the article we are referring to, the EPW 2019 June edition, June 22nd edition. So, where we are saying that in Acharya's work 2013, it is very important to note here that it has been evidential that the unskilled labor abundant countries are actually exporting higher in percentage or largely to the skilled labor abundant countries. So, therefore, the unskilled labor countries, which we assumed earlier in our earlier suggestions by experts, which says that that it is intra-industry trade is the phenomenon observed in developed countries among the similar countries, but now they are not similar, they are dissimilar. Unskilled labor abundant exporting their product to skilled labor abundant countries like US, India to US, and its products are actually exported differently. Now, second most important for China and India, in the work by Roderick in 2006, who says that India and China particularly are the outliers among the developing countries so far as the productivity of the export basket is concerned. I mean, they basically collected all the products and which they are exporting. So, they observed the the productivity of the export basket. They found that India and China are actually the outliers. So, their productivity is much higher than that of many other developing countries. Similarly, in his work, Roderick expected that India's XP, he has used the term, I will clarify now, to be even higher with software exports. I mean, the first statement, India and China are the outlier when we are not including the software exports. But once we are including software exports, India's export and their productivity, XP, they have used the productivity of the export basket. In short, they talked at XP. So, India's export basket is actually very competitive and very productive, especially in the software segment. Now, Bakchi and other authors published an article in 2014 which says that which is also identifying intra-industry trade, especially they observe for 6 Indian industries, and the period mark the period 1990 till 2013. In this range of various years, they observed that there are evidences of intra-industry trade for Indian 6 industries, and Meduri 2011 they studied for 2000 to 2008 period as well. Srivastava and Madhuri 2011 article also is evidential for intra-industry trade. So, I mean basically in their work they found that it is very much evidential, and an IIT intra-industry trade takes place a significant portion in our export basket. I think as I already said from the introduction of intra-industry trade that in the present days the world market is actually covered by intra-industry trade components, and especially if we decompose by sectors, intermediary sector and the final sector are the major example of intra-industry trade. I mean the significant portion of the trade are in the intermediary sector. For example, motor parts or passenger cars, motor parts are very much part of passenger cars, and so in the passenger car are the final segment and motor cars are the intermediate goods. So, it has been observed that many countries are exchanging their motor parts from India, especially getting huge motor parts from other countries and assemble here. And this is also very true to the fact that the country which receive higher FDIs has also higher cases of higher cases of intra-industry trade. And as we have already said that countries largely exchange their goods on the same varieties, I mean qualitatively they are different, and due to that since these are slightly different, it is better to locate the assembling unit in one place or assemble from various countries to make a differentiated goods. For example, China is now number 1 in designing, especially packaging, designing, they assemble also many products, and many even in the pharmaceutical industry the design is given by China. China largely derive huge benefit out of intra-industry trade. Now, we are referring to the intermediary segment, and these are the outcome due to outsourcing and offshoring. Outsourcing plus offshoring has also resulted these evidences. The share of intermediate goods is identified in one of the in two works, Brulhat 2008 and Marini 2017, very latest article. Among other categories, intermediary goods share is quite dominant for IT in the case of intra-industry trade globally. Okay. So, intermediate goods actually gets highest share. Now, let us understand types of IIT. What are different types of intra-industry trade? So, one I mean based on the features, based on the type of products, they vary, largely divided into two types. One is the products are or the characteristics are different by their attributes. So, they are basically, since attributes are different, features are different, so they are actually horizontally different. So, they are called horizontal intra-industry trade. Whereas, when the characteristics or they are characterized by quality differences on the same attributes, still the quality are different, such type of products are called vertically integrated products or vertical, I mean if the trade is taking place, this is called vertical intra-industry trade. Now, what is more recent in the works, especially in the post reform era for Indian context, in Indian trade basket, there have been significant rise in trade as we already said, but especially from post reform era, studies reveal that there has been steady increase in the India's IIT intra-industry trade, and especially in the work recently by Biramani and two articles, also Chadha 2008, J.K. Chadha's article also emphasize these facts. So, in particular what we wanted to say that horizontal differentiation as well as vertical differentiation dominates India's intra-industry trade basket. So, it is also interesting to note and also to understand that the sector has been in a transition from HIIT, that is horizontal intra-industry trade, to vertical intra-industry trade, and also they are in transition from vertical to horizontal. So, it is very interesting to note, because which segment the quality is getting added or the attributes are added. So, some of the experts analyze, we will discuss these things in detail in the next class with certain latest works by different papers. So, what is then important? We have already said that horizontal models are considered to be more relevant for understanding the occurrence of IIT among developed countries. Once again, this is to be noted that horizontal models are more relevant for the developed countries, where the partners are almost having equal attributes in nature, whereas vertical models are largely evidential in the unequal partners, developed and underdeveloped partners. So, then what are the approaches to measure? We have seen types, we have seen evidences, we have seen necessaries for it, we have already explained the justification behind the need of intra-industry trade in the present context. So, Bagchi's article in 2014 talks about unit value dispersion criteria, following Greenway, Hine and Milner approach in famous term called GHM approach, using HS 6 digit label industry. That approach, actually GHM approach, disentangles total IIT intra-industry trade into horizontal and vertical. Those are also termed as high vertical or low vertical industries, in short HVIIT and IVIIT. Bagchi's 2014 article estimated that IIT for 6 major Indian manufacturing industries over the period 1990 till 2013, they found that technologically inferior quality products have been dominant in India's export basket. So, basically LVIIT has been dominant in this huge period, whereas high technology exports have whereas HIIT and export of high technology goods have gained some momentum after global economic slowdown, especially after 2008 HVIIT is observed. Now, you just see the differences. We will again discuss this one in detail. Our intra-industry trade in India over the period is rising. There is a gap because of unavailability of data. So, therefore, there is a disconnection, especially in 2008 onwards, the HIIT in the high end varieties goods are very high, and otherwise it has been rising for Indian case, and the data are based on World Intellectual Trade Solution of World Bank. You can also follow, and we will test its or we will also estimate intra-industry trade in the next class by using global and Lloyd index, also various other indicators, and that will be very empirically based. So, next class will be very interesting to note. With this, I think we will stop here. Thank you.